and because they are seeing the impact of having a global on-chain economy that increases innovation, creativity, and freedom. And so me and my teams and Coinbase and so many other people in the industry, that is what we are working towards. And we've been working for a long time, like more than a decade at this point, but our time has come. And the moment is now for all of us to put our heads down, to ignore the noise, ignore the prices, to keep building, to stay based, and to create the future of the internet on-chain.
The Polygon Community Grants Program was launched with 1 billion tokens, all for Polygon builders. Season 1 is live right now and features 35 million in Matic to support the next generation of Polygon projects. Builders on Polygon, these grants are for you. Join the aggregated future today by applying at polygon.technology/grants. Nothing said on 0x Research is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our opinions, not financial advice. Boccaccio, Ryan, and our guests may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of OX Research. Boccaccio is out today, so you've got me instead filling in, as well as Nikhil from the Blockworks research team, and we're joined by Jesse Pollak from Base. Jesse, glad to have you on. I guess just to kick things off and start off the conversation here, I want to get into what really inspired the creation of Base, and were there some specific problems or goals you guys were going after or trying to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So the creation of Base was kind of a journey. I'd been leading all of the consumer business at Coinbase on the engineering side for 5 years, and after kind of doing that and getting to a certain scale, I'd always been a founder, and I wanted to go and start something new. And I kind of had this idea of what would it look like if we brought Coinbase on chain. We have this incredibly powerful new technology platform that's emerging, and Coinbase is kind of at the cutting edge of crypto. But it was founded in 2012, back before smart contracts existed, really back before any of this new on-chain world that we're building on today was a reality. And so, I think we had this insight as a team of like, if we can figure out how to transform Coinbase, maybe we can then figure out how to kind of transpose that to the world and bring the entire world on chain. And so in late 2021, I started a journey to figure out like, what did it mean to bring Coinbase on chain? We went through a bunch of different ideas, all kind of at the like product layer, thinking about how do we solve specific problems for end users or businesses. And after going through about a year of exploration and a bunch of trying and failing, we kind of pulled back and said, hey, every single time we try to build a product on chain, we're running into the same platform problems. And this, I think, was probably like my engineering mindset really like coming through. It's like every single time we're talking about how do we make sure that this can scale to the scale of Coinbase? How do we make sure it works really well with all the Coinbase products? Like, how do we make sure we're doing it in a secure way? And all of those are kind of specific platform problems that point to a lack of good tooling, to build on-chain applications at the scale and quality kind of requirements of Coinbase. And so after a bunch of failing and trying on the product side, we said, hey, let's try and solve that platform problem. And if we can build a platform that can bring Coinbase on chain, then we can build a platform that can bring the world on chain. And that was the inception of Base. We started in late 2022, launched an internal testnet called BaseNet, just to kind of like prove it out, see if engineers wanted to build on it, and then sped run to a testnet in February of 2023, and then a mainnet in August of 2023. And now, we're about a year later, and Base is the largest L2 in the world. If you look at activity, monthly active users, monthly active developers, we still have some catching up to do on the total kind of assets on the chain. But given that the other folks are 3 or 4 years older than us, that'll happen naturally. And so it's been really cool to see just how quickly I think the world has come to Base and seen the opportunity here to kind of make a bunch of change and positive impact.
Awesome. Love all the background. You started mentioning, limitations as a platform, running into issues, launching products and things like that. I guess I'm curious if we get into maybe some of the technicals there. Can you explain the strategy or the thought process that went into raising the gas limits for the chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had been working kind of even before we realized we wanted to launch Base on scaling Ethereum. because as we looked at what it would take to bring the world on chain, we kind of had this idea of, oh, we need to get transactions down to, an average cost of below 1 cent and an average speed of less than a second. That's kind of this point where everyday people, aren't going to think about it if it's less than a cent, and it's going to feel instant if it's less than a second. And so in early 2022, before we started working on Base, we'd started contributing and kind of co-leading the effort to bring 4844 to Ethereum, which was a big kind of scalability upgrade that ultimately took about 2 years to make happen. So we started working on that with the OP Labs team who built Optimism and a bunch of the Ethereum core developers throughout 2022 and 2023. We helped lead working groups on that, and we did prototypes, we did core development. And as we kind of got to 2024, we had line of sight on that shipping. And we weren't really sure what would happen when that shipped. I mean, at the time, the bulk of our costs and the bulk of user costs were made up in Ethereum L1 costs. And we were kind of unsure, hey, when we drop those costs by creating this new blob space, are we going to have a different behavior in users? Is the pricing mechanics going to change? Like, what is it actually going to look like? And then it happened, March 13th of this year, we switched over to 4844, and pretty immediately we saw a massive amount of induced demand on Base. We just saw way more people transacting because transaction fees dropped by more than 10x. They went from, high tens of cents to generally sub cent. And the bulk of that cost, all of that cost reduction was because the L1 costs dropped very precipitously. Now, the thing that then happened was, okay, now we reduced the L1 cost essentially to zero, but the L2 throughput was still constrained. And so we started having more and more transactions, and that led to kind of us kind of going above our gas target, which then led to increasing L2 execution costs. And so that was a shift in kind of where we needed to focus our efforts to scale Base. We'd done a good job on L1 scaling, although there's still a lot more work to do there. And now we needed to shift to focusing the actual kind of like how fast could the chain itself run. And there's a bunch of different kind of constraints and challenges in that. One, you actually need to make sure that like node software can run fast enough. Two, you need to make sure that you're solving the kind of long-term like state bloat challenge of there's just being so much data that you have to manage. Three, you have to obviously keep up with that on L1 to make sure there's actually enough data availability. And so at that point, we basically just started making the list of here's all the things we need to work through. We have a full dedicated engineering team that's just focused on protocol scaling across L1 and L2. And we kind of took this mindset of, okay, we're just going to start incrementally increasing our gas target as we build confidence that we've been making progress on the performance, state management characteristics of the chain. And so since the middle of March when 4844 happened, we've 4x'd the throughput of the chain. We've gone from 2.5 megagas a second to 10 megagas per second. And we've kind of like planted a flag in the ground on what our North Star is, which is a gigagas per second, which is 1,000 million or 1,000 megagas. So we have about 100x more to go. And there's a lot of work that we need to do to get there. But I think one of the things I feel really grateful for is there's all of these different teams that are working on this, from folks like Paradigm who are pushing it with Reth, to the Geth team who's been doing great work on this for many years, to kind of new entrants like Mega ETH and others who are kind of pushing L2 and EVM scalability with parallelization. And so I think the really cool thing that's going to happen over the next year is you're going to have this kind of collective effort to figure out how do we grow throughput. And Base is going to be putting kind of all of our resources to help accelerate that as much as possible so we can scale to kind of support the world's needs on chain.
Gotcha. No, that's really helpful, Jesse. And, would love to touch on the parallelization part, just in a second. But you mentioned a really great point where, like, after EIP 4844, based on this explosion of usage, I think it's very clear that crypto users and traders are very affected by the cost to transact on chain, and Base was a perfect case study for that. But we've seen instances on like Polygon, even Optimism and Arbitrum, where we see these like higher revert rates or even reorgs when, increasing the gas limit, lowering the cost to transact on chain for a variety of reasons. It's not purely just because of increasing the gas limit, but what we've noticed is that Base does not fall into that category. We haven't seen those reversions or those reorgs on Base. And so I was curious how, what was Base's strategy in ensuring that, let's lower the cost to transact on chain, but somehow maintain this very consistent user experience has been very
Yeah.
clear on Base. So curious on how you guys achieve that.
Yeah, well, first off, I think if you compare Base to Polygon, I mean, it's just a different technical architecture.
Sure.
Polygon has a very, it's a proof of stake. It's an L1 essentially. Sidechain. It has some anchoring that happens to Ethereum, but it's running a proof of stake consensus, and it has a bunch of performance characteristics that, as you increase the kind of gas limit or gas target, it's going to be harder to run that proof of stake network. And I think that's where we've seen challenges with performance there, challenges with lots of reorgs, challenges with error rates. And that's been something that's been pretty consistent over the last 5 years of Polygon's existence. I mean, Polygon's been an incredible leader in the space, and super grateful for all the work that they've done. They built the POS chain before L2s were really a thing. But this is why we have an L2 architecture, because it lets you make different trade-offs. You can bootstrap off of the decentralization characteristics of L1, so you don't have to run a full proof of stake consensus at the L2. That can let you have kind of like a tighter, in the case of all L2s today, kind of single sequencer setup. Although over time, I expect that to change to multi-sequencer, decentralized sequencer, whether that's round robin or some kind of like Tendermint proof of stake type setup there. But you can basically constrain how kind of distributed that needs to be, because you have this kind of forced entry kind of bootstrapping off of the L1 decentralization. And so I think we've really been able to lean into that with Base, and that's been able to give us good performance characteristics even as we scaled. The second thing, and I think this is kind of like Base versus maybe other L2s, is first off, I'll say, like, we're not perfect. We've had issues. There have been failures. The first time I went on vacation, this is before we started raising the gas limit. It was like immediately there was like 10 minutes of downtime on Base. It was like right after Onchain summer last year. Since then, I don't think we've had like a minute of like kind of a stall of the chain. But I think one of the things that we have, that's a little bit different than other L2s is we have a lot of experience running like production scale infrastructure. My prior to Base, what I was responsible for at Coinbase for 5 years was leading Coinbase.com and Coinbase Pro and the Coinbase Wallet product. And from 2017 to 2021, like, boy, do I have some horror and war stories about what it took to keep Coinbase.com up and not keep Coinbase.com up, because at times Coinbase.com went down and we had these really brutal incidents that kept us up all night that we had to try and learn through. Me, the CTO of Base, this guy Michael, we were the two people who led that charge for 4 years, and we helped scale Coinbase, and I think that gave us so many learnings. And then Coinbase has built so much like kind of infrastructure as a result of that, for the scale of a big public company, and the Base team gets to benefit from those learnings. We get to benefit from that infrastructure. We get to benefit from kind of that mindset. And so, just like to give a concrete example of that, one of the things that we've been leading, this has gone kind of under the radar for the last couple quarters, but we've been leading a whole effort to really increase the resiliency of the sequencer, so that if there were kind of like a region outage or a availability zone outage, we could hot swap over in seconds to a new redundant sequencer. We've been doing that all fully open source. It's actually a contribution to the core OP stack code base. And what that is going to let us do is it's going to let us shift our availability goals from the current 4 nines of availability, or I guess 3.5 nines of availability. That's what we target, like 99.95, to 4.5 to 5 nines of availability. And that's really what we're trying to get to, is we're trying to get to 5 nines, which is a very ambitious target. Like, I forget exactly what the number is. Let's see if I can uptime. That is 99.99. I think it's like 1 minute or 2 minutes of downtime a year. It's 5 minutes of downtime a year. So very ambitious target. But I think our perspective is like, if we're going to build a global economy that's going to support the world, like, we need 5 nines. We probably need 6 nines of availability. Like, we need to be always available. That's the kind of guarantee that Ethereum's had, and that's the same guarantee that Base should have. And so that's just the mindset that we bring to it. I think it's a very serious mindset, and it's backed up by a lot of years of experience doing this at scale, and a lot of kind of resources and infrastructure that's coming from Coinbase that's letting us accomplish that. But I'll say, like, I say all of that, and shit's gonna happen, this is like at the edge, cutting edge infrastructure building, and we're scaling the chain more aggressively than everyone else, while of course managing the decentralization components of that and the kind of like node running components of that. But we're going to have failures, we're going to have learnings, and for me, the key is just like taking those learnings and integrating them into how we work and making them like the systems better and better and better. And so we actually have a whole, retrospective process that we run at Base, that comes from, the whole culture of Coinbase, where anytime anything happens, that's bad. Like, we're running a retro, we're giving it a severity, we're taking up action items, we're putting those into engineering work. Like, it's getting converted into a bunch of concrete learnings to make sure that whatever happened, like, never happens again. And we kind of seal up that issue to make sure that we get more and more resiliency.
That makes a ton of sense. And I like that sort of delineation that you provided earlier between, the benefits of having an L2 is that by not having this sort of large validator set, there's certain benefits that come from that that we can kind of see with Base, and makes a ton of sense in terms of what sort of differentiates Base from other L2s that may have higher transaction reversion rates. And so double clicking on the thing that you had mentioned regarding implementations and upgrades that you've provided to the OP stack for these sort of redundant sequencers, was curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on how are the Base sequencers relatively different from other L2s to sort of achieve this lower reversion rate. Of course, there's this one part of there being sort of redundant sequencers to keep the uptime for Base as high as possible. But curious, are there any other additional things you could share about the sequencer that maybe differentiates it from Arbitrum or like traditional OP stack rollups that achieve this lower version?
I don't think so. I mean, not that I'm aware of right now. I think we have like one of the things that is different about Base versus other chains. I think we have a very different composition of people who are transacting on Base versus other chains. Like, for instance, I think you have a lot more retail people who are transacting on Base, and so when you look at like failed transaction rate or reversion rate, a lot of that ends up actually being like it's not that the chain is doing anything wrong. It's that people who are transacting with the chain are doing transactions that are maybe trying to exploit MEV or do some other kind of behavior that it's like, it's a bot behavior where they're trying to kind of like do something with the chain. And I think what you see on Base is actually you have just like a lot of regular people who aren't doing that. They're just like sending USDC, or they're just like doing a meme coin trade, like whatever it is. And that means that we have like a much higher, I think, just like success rate. The other place that you see that, and this actually isn't, I don't think, talked about that much, but and it's mostly a hypothesis right now. I wouldn't say I have hard data on it, but if you look at the like priority fee on Base, and you look at the revenue that Base is generating, that's generally like it's a lot more than all the other L2s. And the reason, my hypothesis of why that is that you again, you have a lot of kind of like retail folks who are there. And those folks are executing trades, and then it's all happening in a private mempool, which means that they're getting kind of best execution in that private mempool. But then that best execution is creating MEV opportunities in the form of backrunning, and that's then being kind of capitalized on by searchers who are paying priority fees to capture those kind of backrunning opportunities. And that's kind of like a healthy form of MEV. It's not something that we think is super problematic, but it does mean that kind of like the overall like revenue generation for Base is higher because there's, again, more like real organic activity versus if you look at, I think, other block space consumption in other chains, you end up having a lot more like either like highly sophisticated or programmatic execution. And that is like it's highly sophisticated and programmatic. You basically have like people PvPing each other, and that just leads to a very, very different characteristic of the block space, characteristic of the revenue generation, and characteristic of the like honest like the capital markets. You can have a ton of volume, but it doesn't really matter, like especially for institutional traders. Like volume isn't the thing that they're looking for. The thing that they're looking for is they're looking for opportunities to profit off of kind of like arbitrage and other things, and that is enabled by having a healthy capital market with a bunch of different participants. And I think if you pull back the curtains and you look at the Base capital market, it's far and away the healthiest capital market on chain right now, because you do have this really organic mix of everyday people and institutions who are coming together to create kind of like a neutral capital market where anyone can participate.
That makes a lot of sense. TLDR guys, Base is the real user chain. So that's awesome to hear. And I know you had touched on this earlier. When we were talking a little bit about raising the gas limit and how it's a sort of multifaceted thing. Discussing the actual like node client that's being run. With the work that the Paradigm team is doing with Reth specifically, and then there's state growth considerations here. So we'd love to understand, what is sort of Base's efforts on the
Yeah.
parallelized EVM side, because I know there's multiple things to sort of consider. Like, for example, a lot of people talk about how parallelized EVM implementations are typically like optimistic parallelized implementations, and by the new Ethereum Pectra update, that might make the EVM more object oriented, which could reduce like re-execution risk. So we'd love to understand, how is Base thinking about parallelizing the EVM, and how much of that is working directly with the Paradigm team with Reth. And I know that Coinbase likes to of
Yeah.
course put their own implementations as well. So how much is coming internally?
Yeah, it's a good question. Also, I just want to say I'm so enjoying this podcast. I think this is the most like technical in the weeds podcast I've done since the launch of Base, and so I think people are going to find it really interesting. And hopefully, I'll demonstrate that I'm not just the person who tweets. I actually like understand all the technology too. Okay, so parallelization. So first off, is we're working really closely with Reth on this. We've now been running Reth production sequencer and kind of like node clusters on our testnet, the Base Sequoia testnet, for I think a few months. We've been running Reth nodes on mainnet for a few months. We have been contributing all of the like kind of op Reth stuff that's needed for getting fault proofs going with Reth, using their kind of like state engine and witnesses, and doing a bunch of other work to just make sure that Reth is a best-in-class client for Base and for other OP stack chains. And that's because, like, at least today, if you look at the architecture of Reth, you look at the architecture of Geth, there's a lot more headroom on the Reth side, both from a like execution speed perspective, but also from a state growth perspective. For instance, like if you project out the current state growth with Base on our Geth node infrastructure, we'll be at like 30 terabytes by the end of next year. And that's like you can do like a a bare metal rack with 30 terabytes or more of storage that's like SSD or NVMe that's tightly connected, not networked hard disk. But you can't get that on an AWS. Like you can't have a cloud offering that gives you more than 30 terabytes. It's just not offered today. And so that's like not that viable for us to continue running nodes and continue having like other people running nodes. Now, if you project that out with Reth, it's way more manageable. Like we're talking single terabytes at the same scale of throughput. And that's at 10 megagas a second. If we're talking about 100 megagas per second, it's like everything blows up, in a way more intense way. And so that's thanks to the hard work of the Paradigm team, who's been working on this for 2 years and has, took a lot of learnings from kind of the whole space and has built a really incredible client. And so this is actually a place where I'd say Coinbase is really excited to lean in with the ecosystem. I mean, when we built our own L2, we didn't go our own way. We said we're going to build on the OP stack, and this was part of the thesis. It was we're going to get a lot further if we can contribute to an open standard that everyone else is contributing to and building on. And if everything we do can help everyone else, if everyone else does, if everything everyone else does can help us. And I feel like Reth is like the prime example of that. So we are going deep with Reth. We are currently like working to move our default clients to Reth, our sequencer to Reth. We're gonna have more announcements on that in the next couple months. And we're actually working right now on a four-part blog that's going to talk about how are we thinking about data availability, execution scaling, state growth, and one other thing, I forget what, like on the path to a gigagas. Because what we observe is that this isn't something that we can do alone. Like we could scale the execution of Base really, really far, but if L1 isn't also doing the work to get that data availability for us, it doesn't matter. And so kind of putting our planting a flag and saying, this is where we're going, this is the roadmap, this is the rate at which we're going to increase. I've actually been pushing our team to like explicitly say, we're going to increase by X rate every week forever, and then we'll keep increasing the rate until the curve bends up, because that gives everyone else a predictability of like, this is what we're coordinating towards. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. Now, in terms of parallelization in particular, I'd say that most of our effort on that right now is going towards Reth, where there's really good kind of research happening. They were just at Frontiers, I think a week and a half ago, and folks were looking at kind of optimistic parallelization on Reth. They were seeing that you could get like a 2 to 3x increase in performance with the current state tree structure and the current lack of upfront specification of access calls, etc. But I think what you're getting at with kind of Pectra, if we're talking about EOF landing, if we're talking about access lists, and potentially a future where L2s require you to specify access lists, combined with EOF, which gets us like potentially much greater ability to say, hey, for these new classes of code, we're going to have more constraints on what you can specify and what you need to pass in on the transaction type. I think we can go a lot further, like a lot further. We're scratching the surface of what's possible here, and that's going to be a really deep collaboration with the Reth team. At the same time, we're also like looking out into the industry and looking at all the other incredible kind of open source research that people are doing and saying, hey, what can we learn from this? How can we pull this into kind of our way of thinking? And how can we help push the best things forward that are going to make us more successful? And, this is a thing that I often say to our team, which is like, we set this 1 gigagas goal. And I think sometimes even folks on our team are like scared about it. They're like, we have like 100x from where we are today. Like, I don't know how we get there. Like, and what I say to them is like, look, you guys, imagine that we are Google in 2001 or 2002. Like, how much did they scale over the next 10 years? Like literally thousands of X, like thousands, right? They built the whole internet. And so, it might take us another 5 years, and we might need to hire a lot more people, and we might have to run into a bunch of hard challenges and fail a bunch, but we are going to scale this thing thousands of X. It's just a question of like how we do it. And the opportunity to get to work on this at the cutting edge is the greatest opportunity of our lives, to kind of define how infrastructure is built to enable this next generation of the internet. And so I think we just have to believe in ourselves and put one foot in front of the other, and clearly communicate with the industry where we're going and what we're seeing and how we're thinking about it, so that ideally all of us can coordinate to get to that future. And I think that coordination component, in the Ethereum ecosystem, I think that's one of the greatest strengths. Right? You basically have, probably at this point, hundreds of teams that are parallel pathing on how do we make the EVM more efficient? How do we get node execution more parallelized? How do we manage state growth? Like hundreds of teams, and all of them are publishing it open source. They're publishing the smart contracts. They're publishing the white papers, and over time, we're going to be able to pull in the best of that. That's going to emerge in this new open source infrastructure of the internet. And we're going to be able to combine that to create something incredibly, incredibly powerful. And that level of, like emergent creativity and emergent solutioning across a very, very diverse set of kind of actors, I think is very unique. It's not something that Google had. It's not something that Facebook had. It's not something that any centralized corporation that was kind of bound to a single company had. And I think it's also not necessarily something that, other ecosystems have, where there are just so many fewer people who are thinking about how do we solve these problems.
Great answer. I was going to say, you've been enjoying the podcast so far. I think we were enjoying having you. I think normally what might be follow-up questions have just been, you answering things before we get to ask them. So that's been great.
Exactly. Yeah. Was going to ask about DA, and then you immediately just touched on that. And
well, I think DA is an important one. And again, like the first part of the blog post for us is going to be about DA. And I actually just was messaging with our team today. It sounds like there was a really good like all core devs call this morning, like ACDE execution client. There was talk about raising the minimum gas fee for blob space, which I'm in support of. I think it's a great idea. I think that we will get to a healthy like 1559 market for blob space, but I also think it's fair for Ethereum to kind of have a higher take rate in this kind of like early stages. I also think it's good for Ethereum to have it be relatively low so that we can, incentivize growth. Like it's still very early in all this, but I just love that we're having conversations about this. We're like testing, we're learning. I do think as it comes to DA, we're just going to plant a flag in the ground. We're at 10 mega gas right now. I'm pushing our team to get to 20 mega gas by the end of the quarter. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's the goal internally. I want our team to take a goal of 1 mega gas per second, 1 mega gas per second increase every single week in perpetuity. And so if we stayed at 1 mega gas per second every week, that would get us to something like 60 mega gas by the end of next year, 2025. I don't want to be at 60 mega gas by the end of 2025. I want to be at like 500 megagas by the end of 2025. And so we'll stay at 1 megagas per second until we feel confident we can go to 2 megagas per second increase per week. But now that we have that in our sights, what we want to do is we want to just draw the graph to the ecosystem and say, hey, here's the graph of our gas consumption that we're going to have, because we believe that with every increase in gas consumption, we're going to be able to saturate it just like we've done thus far. Like, plan for it. And I think once we have that clarity, or the clarity of like, oh, by the end of the year, Base is going to be consuming something like 30 megagas a second. That is way more capacity than all of Ethereum is creating, or not way more. It's about the capacity that Ethereum has right now for data availability, not including any of the other L2s. I think that that's just going to be like a really clear forcing function for the L1 teams, who are incredible engineers and have been working so closely with us on the L2 side, to say, oh, like, we are going to increase the gas, the blob targets in the Pectra release. We are going to make sure that Pure DAS is in it. You know, there's no concerns about that right now. Pure DAS is definitely going to be in it, but there's been a conversation about, should we also increase blob targets? And one of the big questions was, is there going to be consumption for it? And I think, like, the thing I want to be clear about is, yes, Base is going to consume it. And we're going to consume it at an incrementally increasing rate of 1 megagas per second per week. And so that's what we should all be planning for. And if we all plan for that and work towards that and think about that as the end goal that we're trying to get to, I think that's going to help us all be much more efficient and effective in coordinating all of the incredible work that has to happen in order to enable it.
Hey guys, Permissionless, the event for crypto natives, is heading west to Salt Lake City, and we're bringing the biggest names in crypto together for an incredible can't-miss event. Join me and the rest of Blockworks on October 9th to hear from more than 200 industry titans, including Nick White from Celestia, Shriram from AggLayer, and Keone from Monad. The conversations at Permissionless will be covering the hottest themes in crypto, including modularity, restaking, the Bitcoin and Solana ecosystems, AI and crypto, rollups, L2s, institutional adoption, and of course the November election that will be right around the corner. We couldn't be more excited about this event, and it's happening in one of the most beautiful places in the US. Ticket prices will be increasing towards the end of June, so get your ticket today. Make sure to use the code so I get some credit and bragging rights from the rest of the team. Use 0x10 for 10% off on your ticket. One more thing. We're also hosting the Permissionless III Hackathon in collaboration with BiddleBox. The theme this year is a multi-chain future, to build a better cross-chain experience so I don't have to have a heart attack every time I bridge to a new chain. All hackathon participants will receive a free ticket to attend Permissionless. So if you're a developer, come join us in Salt Lake City, team up with fellow devs, and build the multi-chain future. Polygon Labs is developing the next generation of open source ZK tech to aggregate crypto liquidity and user bases, empowering developers to grow in a unified web of interoperable chains with the AggLayer. The AggLayer is a machine for network effects. Don't worry about bootstrapping liquidity, just build anywhere in the AggLayer to tap the liquidity and users everywhere. To support the aggregated future and bootstrap quality projects, the Polygon Community Grants Program was launched with 1 billion tokens, all for Polygon builders. Season 1 of the Community Grants Program is live right now and features 35 million in Matic to support the next generation of Polygon projects. For builders on Polygon or projects interested in migrating, these grants are for you. Join the aggregated future and feel empowered to grow in an infinite web of unified, interoperable chains. Apply today at polygon.technology/grants.
I want to shift gears a little bit. I think we're still in a similar headspace here, but you've mentioned the efforts that I think the broader community has been working on in regards to increasing throughput of the EVM, scaling the EVM, scaling the L1, scaling L2s. I think there's a related conversation in there around thoughts around decentralizing L2 sequencers, for example, and just further decentralizing L2s as they stand today, as there are centralizing aspects of them. I guess for Base, that's a pretty interesting question as well, with Coinbase sort of behind the effort. Can you outline or detail any specifics around other plans for decentralizing the Base chain and like what that roadmap maybe looks like?
Yeah, I mean, we've been very clear from the beginning that being decentralized and open source is a core value for Base and a P0 priority for the L2, straight up. We wrote that the first day when we announced the testnet. We reaffirmed it with the collaboration we did with Optimism that we announced at the mainnet, where we're contributing to Optimism governance. We're a core contributor to the OP stack. We set up the network in such a way where there wasn't a single point of control explicitly, so that we could start from a sufficiently decentralized point that we felt comfortable bringing this thing to the world in an open and permissionless way. And so from the absolute beginning, we have been public and committed to being decentralized. And then we've made progress quarter over quarter towards that goal. The most recent progress is we just launched fault proofs on testnet. We're working to get fault proofs live on mainnet. We expect that to happen very soon. And that's going to get us to a stage 1 roll up, which is, comparable to the other kind of like leading L2s. And then we're going to be working fast towards stage 2. And so I just want to be clear to anyone listening to this podcast, Base is going to be decentralized. It already is meaningfully decentralized. It's just going to keep being more decentralized. And the place that comes from is I've been in crypto for more than a decade at this point, and I deeply believe in decentralization. That's why we're here. And the only way we can build a global on-chain economy that increases innovation, creativity, and freedom is if we build it on a decentralized platform. Because if we don't build it on a decentralized platform, inevitably that economy will end up being co-opted and coerced by a corporation or country. Full stop. We know that that's what's going to happen. And so you could get to a local maxima if you don't decentralize. And I think a lot of people look at Base inside of Coinbase and they're like, oh, Coinbase is just a corporation. They're just going to get to the local maxima of a not decentralized Base that looks like an extension of Coinbase. And that's what we need to be critiquing and stopping. I'm not working towards the local maxima. I'm working towards the global maxima, which is a global on-chain economy that increases innovation, creativity, and freedom. And the only way to get there is by being a decentralized platform. And so that's my belief as the leader of Base. The other person who really believes in this is Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase. Day one, when we launched the testnet of Base, it's 11:50 p.m., long day for me. I get a message from Brian Armstrong. And it says 2 things. He says, "Great job, Jesse. That was really impressive. Loved the launch. Blue Dot, incredible. First off, you just launched the testnet. And you can't pat yourself on the back until you launch the mainnet and you're solving real problems for real people. So go launch the mainnet and make sure that actually works. Second off, you must decentralize this thing. If you do not decentralize this thing, all of this is for naught. All of this is for naught. It must be decentralized." And from the beginning of Base, that has been the message that I've gotten and that has gotten to our team and has gotten to the industry. We have a CEO founder of Coinbase who has been working on crypto and decentralization for longer than almost anyone in the world, who supports a creator of Base and me who's been working on crypto for a decade. And the two of us and our whole team and the whole company believe that the only way to build a global on-chain economy is to build it on a decentralized platform. And so that's how we're coming at this from kind of a philosophical perspective. Now, there's a lot of hard problems in order to decentralize an L2. A lot of hard problems. That's why, it wasn't something that we started with, started at stage 0. That's why all L2 started at stage 0. And then we're incrementally making progress. We're getting fault proofs out. We're really excited about that. We got it on testnet. We're going to be integrating the Security Council into our upgrade keys. That's going to bring us there's an even more decentralized group of folks who are needed in order to enact any changes. And it's at the point we integrate the Security Council, we're talking about full geographic distribution across the world, full entity distribution, very, 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 very distributed set of folks who are going to have a scoped down set of permissions. And then we are speed running the kind of next things that we need to get to in order to get to stage 2, which is multi-proof. So we actually have multiple proofs that are operating the fault-proof game, which then lets us constrain what roles and rights a Security Council has. Because you can say, hey, the Security Council could only intervene if there's disagreement among the different proofs. And the way we built the OP stack, fully open source, collaborative with folks like Reth and Geth and Nethermind and others who've been building execution clients, is built, and the way we design Bedrock in collaboration with OP Labs is built to enable multi-proof. And today we have proofs that can actually, multiple of them. We have fault proofs that are running on Geth. We're about to have fault proofs that are running on Reth. We have early experimental fault proofs that are running in kind of like fully different virtual machines, like MIPS. The first ones are MIPS VM, but we're also looking at a RISC VM. And then we also have teams that are standing up ZK proofs. For instance, we just saw one that is ZK proving with a succinct like SP1 ZK proof OP stack. And so I think next year we're going to get to a point where we actually have like multiple production proofs ready. There's going to then be a bunch of upgrade work that we need to do in order to get to that being live and have that kind of permissions constraining happening on the Security Council. But I feel like we have a really clear path there, and it's mostly just executing. So that's kind of fault-proof decentralization and kind of like Security Council governance decentralization. I think we're making really good progress there. On the sequencer decentralization, which is another point of decentralization, and I was on Twitter yesterday, and I think there's like a lot of noise about sequencer decentralization right now, and someone was like, "Oh, like how Coinbase will never decentralize the sequencer." Like, people are going to say whatever they want on Twitter, but we're making progress on decentralizing the sequencer. Like literally, we did an RFP, at I think it was like late last year to look at round robin sequencing. That RFP has turned into more work that's happening on the OP stack core development to enable round robin sequencing. I can't give specific timelines, but there are plans to start moving OP stack chains to round robin sequencing because we think that round robin sequencing is like a reasonable starting point and potentially like a reasonable ending point if we can get that round robin sufficiently decentralized. And so there's really good progress there. I also think that one of the like fundamental misunderstandings with kind of like sequencer decentralization is people look at sequencer decentralization and they say, oh, like, no one's going to decentralize the sequencer because it's going to mean giving up the revenue for the chain. And it's going to mean like divesting of the revenue to sequencer, like decentralization participants. And that they can make that critique regardless of whether you have a public company like Coinbase running the sequencer, or you have a foundation running the sequencer, or you have a DAO running the sequencer. Like it's the same critique, which is like the person who's running the sequencer won't want to do that. I think that like I have a slightly different perspective on this, which is decentralizing the sequencer doesn't necessitate changing all of the economic value flows to make it so that all the people who are participating in decentralized sequencing are, capturing all of that revenue. For instance, one of the big conversations that's happening on L1 right now is what would it look like if we internalized more MEV and burned more MEV? What does that actually mean? It means the people who are doing proposing and block building are not going to end up capturing all of that MEV value. And instead, that MEV value will be internalized into the network, because the network is the thing that's providing the flow that people are then monetizing, and it will then be made productive inside the network. The same thing can be true for L2s. If you think about decentralized sequencing not as, oh, this is an immediate path to kind of like willy-nilly give away all of the value of the network to like random participants, but instead you think about it like your normal rational business person, just like Ethereum can be a normal rational business person. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get a new service into this technology stack, which is a decentralized set of people who can propose and validate blocks. And that service has a price. It has a price. And you can pay that price, but my gut and my current intuition is that that price does not equal giving up all of the valuable network effects and all of the value that flows from that to those participants. It equals paying for that value. And I don't know exactly where that will be priced, but I do think that that is a common misunderstanding that kind of confuses people, because they're like, oh, why would a chain ever decentralize sequencing if they have to give up all the value? And I think that's just thinking about it wrong, right? It's like, why would a chain ever pay for this value, which is a decentralized sequencer set, which can increase, censorship resistance and can kind of give more reliability, redundancy potentially, and help us kind of build a healthier ecosystem that has a value. The chain can pay for that. We need to figure out the technology for how the chain pays for it, but that's a very, very different calculation. And I think if we think about it in that way, you end up being able to think much more clearly and being able to reason about, okay, what's the path to get there? How much is that worth? How much is that worth for Ethereum L1? How much is that worth for L2s? How do we build something that actually solves that kind of solution set where the participants are earning and being valued for their contributions, and the kind of network, regardless of how it's governed, is still able to kind of take the value that it's generating and use it to reinvest in itself? Because if you look at the revenue that Coinbase is generating from Base, which is not that much revenue right now. I mean, people are like tweeting incorrect numbers on it. But if you look at that number, where is that all going? I'm spending it all, putting it back into Base. Like literally, we're giving out millions of dollars of funding and grants. We're employing a team to do critical infrastructure research. We need to keep enabling these, ecosystems to invest in themselves. And I think like that can happen alongside us continuing to decentralize sequencer and continuing to decentralize the entire chain, if we think about it as, just a technology upgrade that needs to happen and it has a price.
Really detailed, really great response. I think you hit all of the relevant points, and even the recent discussion online that's been happening.
Yeah, I'm following along.
And then I think like as sort of a relevant point, you sort of mentioned the value for users and consumers of, chains like this and the purpose of decentralizing, sequencer, for example. I mean, can you go into any details around like the consumer app or sort of maybe socialify strategy for Base, like targeting consumers and building for them? Clearly that's like a very key purpose. So is there anything specific about how you're going about that to kind of, attract or build for their sake?
Yeah. I mean, like consumer focus has been the focus of Base from the beginning. And I'd say really right now there's two primary North Stars that we are focused on. Base is an economy. There's going to have everything in it. But when it comes to consumer experiences, the places that we are seeing the most current potential is payments and kind of basic primary financial account financial services around that, and then social. And I don't use the word socialify. Like, I just think it's bad. It's like bad word. It's just social. And we're using this new technologies, this new platform to build better social experiences that have more direct earning potential for the creators who are actually bringing their creativity on chain. And so when we're thinking about kind of Base and our go-to-market and kind of like what the top two areas are, that's it. On the payment side, it's about how do we get as many easy-to-use experiences on the wallet? How do we get as many stable coins in as many different countries so people can on-ramp into a local currency that they're familiar with? How do we give really great execution for a cross stablecoin execution? I actually just tweeted about this morning. If you look at euro to dollar conversion rates on chain, they're currently 100 times faster and 2 to 10 times cheaper than anything into the traditional Web2 world or traditional finance world. 100 times faster and 2 to 10 times cheaper. 100 times faster, 2 to 10 times cheaper. Like, what's crypto good for? Well, it's 100 times faster and it's 2 to 10 times cheaper. And so figuring out how do we make that just work in every single country in the world so that people can come on chain and it's not this like crazy thing, but it's instead, oh, now your money just works 100 times faster and 2 to 10 times cheaper than it did before. And we're building a really healthy financial ecosystem of real products that let you borrow and lend and get credit and earn that are globally accessible and that work with your money. Like, that's a really powerful payments plus primary financial account product, and making it so that A, the infrastructure from a technology perspective is all there. B, the infrastructure from an economic and capital markets perspective is there. Stable coins, trading infrastructure, lending infrastructure, borrowing infrastructure. And then C, you have really incredible user experiences in the form of wallets that are globally available, that are localized. That is like a core part of our strategy. And so there's been also all this noise on crypto Twitter about like DeFi and Ethereum, and like it's on-chain finance. We can call it DeFi, but it's going to be massive. Like, we're literally going to re-platform the entire financial system onto things like Base and Ethereum, and it's been the leading use case for the last 6 years. 7 years, the lifetime of Ethereum. It's going to continue to be a leading use case along other use cases that emerge because the whole internet's going to come on chain. And Base is deeply, deeply invested in it because we believe that the best thing we can do for achieving Coinbase's mission, which is increasing economic freedom globally, is create a global on-chain economy that lets people come into it and lets them live a better life. And that's going to happen because we're going to build incredible tools, incredible financial infrastructure, and incredible interfaces that let everyone just do that. So that's my take on DeFi. The other one, social. If you look at the last decade of consumer growth, of new apps that have emerged, all of the apps that have gotten any meaningful level of consumer scale adoption. When I talk about meaningful adoption, I'm not talking about like meaningful crypto adoption. I'm talking about meaningful adoption, like hundreds of millions or billions of users. They are all social apps. Period. All of them, 100%. Maybe there's like, so like payments. I think payments are social. Maybe there's like shopping, but even the shopping apps, all of them are social. And so if we're talking about what's going to bring the world on chain, it's going to be social products. full stop. And so that's why kind of from the beginning, Base has been really focused on enabling social experiences. That's why you saw us lean in really hard with Farcaster and still be leaning in with Farcaster and Frames and making it so developers can build these kind of like one-click interactive social content units where you can buy or mint or pay or tip or nominate someone all in a single feed. That's why we've, I think, really been leading the way in talking about the story of creators and how creators right now, when they bring their creativity online, they make less than 1% of the value. And in the new on-chain social world, they can make 90% of the value. And that's why we've been doing that ourselves with the Base brand, where everything we do is minted on-chain. And we have generated hundreds of ETH of revenue, which we then given back in the form of creator grants to creators who are creating on-chain. Because we believe that once we get this flywheel going, we're going to just be able to suck in all the creators, because they're gonna be like, oh, I can make 1% here, I can make 90% there. Yeah, I'm gonna make 90% there. That's way better for me. And that's also why we have been kind of like helping in whatever way we can people build incredible social experiences with things like the smart wallet, which lets you on ramp in less than 10 seconds, get a new wallet, less than 10 seconds. We're about to launch session keys that will mean you never have to sign a transaction again. It all just works behind the scenes in a fully non-custodial way. And we're going to make it so the login experience, both for users and developers for social products, is 10x better on chain than online. And when that exists, then people will be able to build 10x better products that whenever you come to a new social product, you're not going to have to set a profile. You're not going to have to set a description. You're not going to have to set your picture. You're not going to have to follow your friends. You're not going to have to import your text messages. You're just going to come there and it's all going to work because you're going to have one on-chain identity, probably connected to and represented by your base name, that will immediately know who you are, where you can share information that you want to privately with that application. And then we can build composable social products that all feed off of each other to create something that's 10x better than whatever exists today. And so that is still very early, but I think we're starting to see real signs of growth. And if we solve those two problems, payments plus primary financial account powered by really powerful decentralized finance, DeFi or on-chain finance infrastructure, plus viral social products that bring the world on chain through kind of natural virality, everything else is going to follow. We're going to see the games because they're going to get distributed through the social graphs and they're going to have really easy payments built into them. We're going to see the decentralized physical infrastructure, again, because they're going to be distributed through social graphs and they're going to have really good payments built into them. Like anything that is being done online right now will be able to be done better on chain because it will have access to a really powerful social graph that you can build on top of, plus incredible payments infrastructure that makes it easy for businesses to accept money from anyone, anywhere in the world. And so that's the kind of top two focuses for us this year and as we head into 2025. And then, of course, again, Base is a really rich economy and we're working and supporting people across every single part of the economy.
That makes a lot of sense, Jesse. And I have to say, like, if we had more time, I want to ask a ton more questions. I think personally, for me, this has been my favorite 0x research pod that I've been on. So, really appreciate you having on to kind of close things out related to the conversation that, we're having here at the tail end about the consumer app focus for Base and, the sort of change of some of these traditional experiences that folks have and how Base more specifically, but also crypto as a whole augments that. And so, I was kind of curious, like 5 years out from now, you touched a little bit about like, on-chain identity and whatnot, but, what does the sort of general on-chain experience look like, or what do you want it to look like on Base specifically? And especially compared to a lot of the traditional financial services and traditional applications, imagine the next big social media platform and it's on Base, or the next big, neobank that, maybe it's Coinbase itself, just, built on top of Base, whatever that is. What does that look like 5 years from now? And how does Base enable that specifically?
Well, I hope it doesn't take us 5 years to get to what I want to get to. I think that we now have the pieces to get there the next year. And like, I was actually just talking about this with our CFO. Like, I feel like in the last year, we built a bunch of the pieces, things like the smart wallet, getting Base really cheap, getting base names live, but they're still a little fragmented. Like they don't work cohesively together. For instance, like we shipped a smart wallet because we want to get out as quickly as possible, but like it doesn't yet work in the Coinbase wallet mobile app. So people have like two wallets. It's really confusing, super broken experience. But that was an intentional decision we made so we could get this thing out, we could learn, we could iterate, and then we're now working, of course, to integrate it into the mobile wallet, and it will all just work. And so my goal is by next summer, by Onchain Summer 3, like it's all going to just work. And I think what that experience looks like is you see a new app that you like, you download it, whether it's a mobile app or a website, you go to the website, you click create an account, that pops up a biometric. You put in your biometric and immediately you've just created a smart wallet. That smart wallet works across all the other apps you want to. Next, if that app wants profile information about you, it's like, okay, cool, create a base name. And you create a base name that's free because it's going to be subsidized for your first year, and maybe it'll be 20 cents after that every year, which is less than people pay for iCloud storage. And you can start putting in information. You could add a profile picture. You have a name. You maybe add some private information like your email account or your phone number, your shipping information that gets stored off chain or stored in an encrypted vault that's accessed by you. And then immediately that app has access to it. That app then can say, oh, you want to, mint something? Great. First mint free. Because we're using a paymaster that makes this experience fully gasless. You mint your first one, you support a creator that you love. Next, you're scrolling again, you mint another one. Oh, in order to do this mint, you need like 10 cents or 5 cents. Mints just dropped 10x. They were $3 before. Now they're, 25 cents. They're going to go cheaper again. It'll be another 10x cheaper. And it's like, want to pay with Apple Pay? Great. Boom. Apple Pay. First one, Apple Pay. You paid with Apple Pay. You minted with Apple Pay. And now you have, credit on your wallet to do 10 mints because you did $1 Apple Pay payment. Awesome. It's totally seamless. Took 2 seconds. Next time, oh, you're out of balance. It's a lot cheaper if you fund with your debit card or if you fund with your ACH. Do you want to bring some money on chain? If you bring money on chain, you're going to get more money in your pocket because you're going to have a higher interest rate. You're going to be able to send to anyone in the world. Boom. Now we get them to bring $100 or $1,000 into their wallet. They then use that to mint in the social app. They start following. They build out a social graph. It's all working there. And then they're like, oh, my friend just sent me this really cool new social app. I download the social app. It says log in. I click log in. I log in. Boom. Everything is there. I have a funded wallet. I have a social graph. I can see all of my past activity. It all just works. I'm like, whoa, this is a new internet. Like before I would have had to spend 10 minutes creating this account, and now it just works. Awesome. Now I have a second social app. Same thing for third, fourth, fifth. Boom. I want a new financial product. Download an app, financial product. Oh, this is a more trading one because I'm getting more advanced. Download, same thing, log in, just works. Have everything I need there. Oh, you want, you just brought $1,000 on, but now you're bringing $5,000 on. That sounds like that's a lot of money. You should secure this account more. Do you want to set up social recovery? Oh, here, pick these 3 people to set up social recovery. Now you're going to need 2 of them to recover your account in the event that you lose it. Do you want to set up a Coinbase recoverer? That we'll do a video call and a ID verification to make sure that you are who you say you are. Now, okay, great. If you ever lose your passkey or your signing mechanism, that can recover it. Also, we should set up 2-factor authentication for you. Here, add another hardware key or a second signer. For transactions that are above $1,000, you'll now need this second signer. Great, set up, boom. Now you go to do some real financial products. Oh, great, I'm gonna bring in $100,000. I know that if I ever lose access to my account, I can recover from Coinbase, I can recover from social recovery. I know that if a hacker ever tries to do something on my account, if it's more than $1,000, I'm gonna have to do a second verification that's gonna be more secure than my bank. And I feel confident, oh, this is a new financial product that actually works better for me. It's more secure, it's more transparent. But one of the things that is making me a little nervous is my account is public. And that's really good for social, but I just brought $100,000 on and maybe I have more. I don't feel comfortable having it on that. Okay, cool. Well, great. You have a private vault too. Here's your private vault. Bring money into the private vault. Your private vault can do all the same stuff. You can send money to friends. You can invest in meme coins. You can hold money in a stable coin account. And all of that just works. You don't have to think about complexity. You just use this address and you have people send to private.jesse.base. Now you have your full on-chain privacy. And all of this is encompassed in a simple base name that works everywhere, that has all of your history attached to it, can manage your privacy, a simple smart account that lets you have sub-accounts, lets you have recovery, lets you have multi-factor authentication, and then it's running on top of a secure, scalable L2 in Base that doesn't just lock you to Base, but is a bridge, not an island, and lets you do anything you want across all of the chains, across the entire on-chain economy. because we can use intents and cross L2 execution with all the standards that we've written to make it so you can seamlessly use your balance that's sitting on Base to transact across any other L2, to transact across Solana, to do things on L1 if you need to. And we can trust that that's going to happen in the most efficient, capital efficient way possible. So like, that's what we're going to have next year. Like, I'm just calling the shot. Like that, literally, this is what we're building. We started building it last year. It takes a long time to build things, but that's where we will be next year. The privacy stuff might take a little bit longer, but like that's the North Star. And so I think that version of Onchain is going to be better than any internet product, period. Full stop. And it's going to enable more innovation and more creativity than any internet technology platform that exists today by 10x. Full stop. And we're going to enter this golden era that we've been waiting for, that where we're not going to see, hype driven by prices. We're going to see hype and excitement driven by adoption and utility and people coming on chain because it gives them an opportunity to live a better life. And because they are seeing the impact of having a global on-chain economy that increases innovation, creativity, and freedom. And so me and my teams and Coinbase and so many other people in the industry, that is what we are working towards. And we've been working for a long time, like more than a decade at this point, but our time has come. And the moment is now for all of us to put our heads down, to ignore the noise, ignore the prices, to keep building, to stay based, and to create the future of the internet on-chain.
Amazing. I love the optimism. It's refreshing because, CT is just constantly drowning in this doomerism, and, we need more of this energy. And so I'm glad that you brought it, Jesse.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, loved it, Jesse. Love the final sort of layout of the vision and the plan. Maybe hopefully we can have you on again next year and talk about Onchain.
Let's talk about next year at the end of next year. Excited for it.
See everything live. It was great having you on. Any final statements you want to make? Or
no.
I think
thanks everyone for listening, and we'd love to build with you on Base. If you need help, go to base.org. We have tons of resources. Get your Base name. We'll automatically kind of route you to whatever you need in order to be successful. And we're excited to support you in whatever way we can.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, and thanks everyone for watching.
Stay based, everyone.
Are you currently building on Polygon or interested in migrating? Season 1 of the Polygon Community Grants Program is live right now and features $35 million in Matic to support the next generation of Polygon projects. Builders on Polygon, these grants are for you. Join the aggregated future today by applying at polygon.technology/grants.